All right, we're going to get right to it. Jeffrey Tucker from Brownstone Institute is here. He's one of our favorite guests and one of my favorite thinkers, thought leaders on the debacle of what we've been through with the excesses of COVID, what it exposed us to. And we'll speak to him first, and then we're going to bring in Dr. Vibeke Manniche. I can never quite get the name. She's a Danish physician, done some groundbreaking research. She's the one that alerted us to the fact that different lots, different production vats of vaccine had different side effect profiles. Shocking. Of course, it took her 2 years to get that published. This data she now has shows diminished fertility in 1.5 million Czech women if you've been vaccinated. It's a good study. You hear about it. First, Jeffrey Tucker up after this.
Our laws as it pertains to substances are draconian and bizarre. The psychopaths start this way. He was an alcoholic because of social media and pornography, PTSD, love addiction, fentanyl and heroin. Ridiculous. I'm a doctor, for sake. Where the hell do you think I learned that? I'm just saying, you go to treatment before you kill people. I am a clinician. I observe things about these chemicals. Let's just deal with what's real. We used to get these calls on Loveline all the time. Educate adolescents and to prevent and to treat. If you have trouble you can't stop and you want help stop it, I can help. I got a lot to say. I got a lot more to say.
I'm excited to bring you a new product, a new supplement, Fatty. I take it. I make Susan take it. My whole family takes it. This comes out of, believe it or not, dolphin research. The Navy maintains a fleet of dolphins, and a brilliant veterinarian recognized that these dolphins sometimes developed a syndrome identical to our Alzheimer's disease. Those dolphins were deficient in a particular fatty acid. She replaced the fatty acid, and they didn't get the Alzheimer's. Humans have the same issue. And we are more deficient in this particular fatty acid than ever before. And a simple replacement of this fatty acid called C15 will help us prevent these syndromes. It's published in a recent journal called Metabolites. It's a new nutritional C15, pentadecanoic acid it's called. The deficiency that we are developing for C15 creates something called the cellular fragility syndrome. This is the first nutritional deficiency syndrome to be discovered in 75 years and may be affecting us in many ways, and as many as 1 in 3 of us. This is an important breakthrough. Take advantage of it. Go to fatty15.com/Dr. Drew to receive 15% off a 90-day starter kit subscription, or use code Dr. Drew at checkout for that 15% off, or just go to our website, drdrew.com/fatty15. So I don't forget, I remind everyone to follow Dr. Manniche at Manniche, Vibeke. It's a mouthful, it's Danish, on X. Also Vibeke Manniche on Instagram. And the same thing, the website is VibekeManniche.dk. Jeffrey Tucker, on the other hand, is quite a bit more easily remembered and executed. Jeffrey Tucker on X. That's that, and jeffreytucker.me. Jeffrey, welcome.
Sure.
Thank you for making that easy.
Sure. So, no, it's that, oddly though, I think you made a mistake. I think it's Jeffrey A. Tucker.
Yeah. You're correct. It is Jeffrey A. Tucker on X, and it's Jeffrey Tucker on the website. So yes, okay. Well, I would have sent everybody over to Jeffrey Tucker. So good for you that I didn't do that. Yeah. So you seemed a little downtrodden today. Is something come through that's got to you? I know Brownstone is in the crosshairs, but as one publicist said to me the other day, she goes, "Look, if you're not in the middle of a shitstorm, you don't exist. So congratulations, you exist."
I suppose that's one way to look at it. I'm just tired of it. I'm tired of it. It's all so predictable. It's so preposterous. I just got through reading some article on ABC, NBC, MSNBC, I don't know, one of these things, and they're wailing and whining about the new ACIP committee, which is the advisors for immunization practices that works with the CDC on vaccines, and RFK got rid of the 17 members that were heavily conflicted. We documented that today on an article for Brownstone. They're basically working for vaccine companies, failed to recuse themselves and votes on these pharmaceutical products that even though they're working for the same companies that are producing the drugs on which they're voting. And so RFK said, all right, it's enough of this nonsense, and hired 8 new independent experts who are unpaid, by the way. And some of them are associated with Brownstone. And of course, we're in the crosshairs. So I'm reading this nonsense in the mainstream media about me, about Brownstone, of our work, and none of it is correct. It's all just silly. I don't know who's writing these articles, but I know on whose behalf they're writing the articles, which is their advertisers, who, are inevitably the pharmaceutical companies that previously paid the old ASAP members. In other words, the corruption and, the quid pro quos, the system, it's so obvious to me now, it gets tiresome, as does the rhetoric, as do the brutal attacks and that sort of thing. So, it's maddening, truly.
It's tiresome. It is tiresome, but we are curing your Gelman amnesia. I think I explained to you once before what this is, right? And the cure to Gelman amnesia, the surest cure is to have a print media outlet, particularly newspaper, particularly a major, write an article about you. Then you will realize how far from the truth they stray. And trust me, just because they're writing it about you, you're not the only subject upon which they weave their nasty habits. Everything is done that way. Everything is untrue. Everything is distorted. And you said something under your breath before the mics heated up. You said, I don't know. I don't know what, I can't believe anything anymore. And that's where I'm at now. Not only can I not believe anything in the media, which I was there about a year ago, I don't know who the good guys are. I don't know what's right and what's wrong anymore. Yeah. I'm getting lost in the bullshit.
And I don't know how many people are reading these things anymore. I asked my web, because one of the articles that I just read that has a big attack on me, this guy named Jeffrey Tucker, who I don't know, and then Brownstone, which I supposedly run, but of course, not the organization that's frequently described in the press. But I asked our webmaster to follow through to see how many click-throughs we get, and inevitably, when I ask these questions, the answer is almost none. So, I don't even know who's reading these things, or if they are reading them, if they're taking them seriously. Let me just give you one quick example that struck me just now. Everybody's still kvetching about the Great Barrington Declaration. Oh, how could they have done that? Oh, that was a terrible thing to have done the Great Barrington Declaration, which said in October of 2020 that we should focus on the people who are actually vulnerable to medically significant outcomes from COVID and let otherwise society go back to normal. And the article that we're talking 4 years later now, they describe the Great Barrington Declaration as advocating that people who are not at risk of death just go out and get infected.
Right.
That is not what it said. And it strikes me as, no, it was even worse. It said, let them get infected. Well, what actually is the alternative to letting people be free to, for example, go to the coffee shop or whatever, or go to church? Mm-hmm. The alternative is to keep them locked in their homes, CCP style. Is that really what they're still advocating to this day? Is it not obvious that the Great Barrington Declaration was just a plain statement of public health? Are we really going to pretend like it was still some big controversial article to say we should use normal medical methods to cure the sick and otherwise let society not be destroyed by force?
So let's reframe it. What it really was saying, A, let's follow the pandemic preparedness plan as laid out by thousands of experts, A. B, let's practice good isolation techniques as we always have in pandemics. Let's do what we've done and let's do it well. That's what it advocated. And this new thing came up. And remember, behind that was this false flag of zero COVID, as though zero COVID was a possibility. It is an impossibility. And then they would then fall back on, well, if you'd done it sooner. No. If you recall, there's some of our favorite folks right there. Jay Bhattacharya, that's one of the great triumphs of this whole affair is that he's at the NIH now. But in any event, the fact that it was 2 weeks to flatten the curve, everybody. The goal was to not overwhelm. We were all going to get sick. That was inevitable. That's what a pandemic is with a penetration rate that they had. And we were going to get sick, and we just needed to make sure the healthcare system could handle it. That was it. That was the opening volley. And then it moved into zero COVID. LA County never came off zero COVID. They never, ever came off it until there was a major uprising against the sociologist who was running our public health system.
You know, that zero COVID movement was a strange one. It emerged in 2020 and it persisted. But even to this day, I'm not entirely sure that even the most extreme methods have been thoroughly investigated or really repudiated. I mean, if people are still upset about the Great Barrington Declaration, then it suggests to me that people are still rallying around, Fauci-style methods of using force to drive down the R-naught and scare the virus into the ether or whatever the thing was at the time. It upsets me. We still haven't really had a reckoning to this. I mean, we took away people's freedom and rights and destroyed the property rights of enterprise and subsidized the tech streaming companies, and the censorship was absolutely brutal throughout the whole period. So that even now I'm meeting people that were in heavy resistance mode early on that I'd never heard of before because they were censored. All of this happened to us. We're still not entirely clear we understand who the malefactors were or why or what they were thinking or what went wrong with the system to cause this to happen. But even given all that, we don't even have a sort of a society-wide acknowledgement that this was a catastrophic error. We were still pretending as if people like Kulldorff and Bhattacharya are dangerous radicals. And so Kulldorff is now on the new ACIP committee, so of course he's being hammered for that, even though this guy is Harvard professor, the major expert in vaccine safety, wrote a lot of the software that we've been using for 30 years to assess the safety and efficacy of these vaccines. And has no conflicts of interest. I mean, he's never been paid by any of these pharmaceutical companies, so he's perfect for the committee. But now you have the mainstream press writing, above the fold articles, treating him as some sort of dangerous figure who's going to take your vaccines away from you. It's just absurd. And then we've got the attacks on Malone and then Brett F. Levy from MIT and so on. It's all become so predictable. We've got team freedom and then team tyranny, and they're fighting every day. And the mainstream press is definitely on the side of team tyranny. So this is where we are. And you mentioned something about Bhattacharya at NIH, which is gratifying to me personally because he's a great man and a great scientist and has become something of a mentor since those days to me. But, you said he's head of NIH, and he is. On the other hand, does he control NIH? I mean, that's debatable, I would say. You have these entrenched bureaucratic establishments with thousands, tens of thousands of employees with protocols and machinery that's in action, every day. They just keep doing their own thing. Whenever he stands up and gives a talk at NIH, you've got hundreds of people that disappear. And let me just tell you a quick story. You should have me on more so I don't dominate the time like I do. But a couple of weeks ago, there was a thing that came out called, I have to get it right, the Bethesda Declaration. And it was a bunch of people who had either been, lost their jobs at NIH or, are upset about having somebody move their cheese, kind of thing. And this document was poorly written. I mean, it's barely literate. They would have been better off using ChatGPT. And, whining and wailing about everything. Science is collapsing. It's the end of the world. So get this. This document came out at 8 a.m. And at 8:01, there were 16 articles in the mainstream media that appeared simultaneously that echoed everything in that document. every word of it, celebrating it as this glorious statement of principled opposition to Bhattacharya. That happened at 8:01. By noon, I lost count. I mean, there were certainly in the hundreds of articles about this gibberish that was signed by, I don't know, less than 1% of the people at NIH. So that's what we're faced with here. Oh, and by the way, this contrasts with the Great Barrington Declaration, right? So we came out with this thing, and on a website that we created, and just a handful of social media accounts going, oh, you might want to read this. Well, it just so happened that after 8 months of exhaustion, of being, engaged in these preposterous kabuki dance of COVID protocols, that people were really glad about it and shared it really widely. And so then the agencies, NIH with Fauci and Collins and so on, then shared emails with each other going, wow, we got a real problem here. We got some fringe epidemiologists that are disagreeing with us. We better subject them to a quick and devastating takedown. You got any journalists in your back pocket? And Fauci goes, no problem. And, gives a call to all the usual suspects, Rolling Stone and Wired and Washington Post, all these kept reporters who cranked out a bunch of gibberish, over the coming weeks. So there's the difference, right? The Bethesda Declaration already had the media in the back pocket. The Great Barrington Declaration, on the other hand, was just a handful of people with no power, no money, trying to reassert traditional public health principles. I mean, that's the irony of the parallel there.
Yeah, and Jay always has said, Jay Bhattacharya, he goes, when I pushed out the Great Barrington Declaration, he goes, I was so naive. I thought I was just doing what I normally do, offering an opinion. And the fact that these people had to, I had to be subjected to a devastating takedown, their words, quick and devastating takedown. He didn't believe it at first. It's like it was so anathema to how we operate as a profession. And yet still here we are in it, weirdly.
But that's the other thing. The Bethesda Declaration was, 5,000 words. But the Great Barrington Declaration was, I think, about 700 words. And they signed it. And then they didn't know what to do. They said, well, what should we do now? And I guess it was Jay or somebody said, well, maybe we need a website. What do you think about that? And I talked to Lou Eastman, who's my colleague now at Brownstone, and he said, man, we can do that. How long will it take? What, can you get it up in the morning? What? Yep, I missed my night of sleep. And Jay said, well, can we have other people sign it? And Lou said, well, that could be a trick, but we could try. And Jay said, oh, good. We're going to get 1 million signatures from this thing. And I was sitting on the other side of the room. I mean, maybe I was 7 feet away from him. I said, Jay, if we get 1 million signatures for this thing, we are going to have other problems. And he said, really, like, what kind? Well, they found out pretty quickly. There were wanted posters at Stanford University, posted on trees about him. Scott Atlas is still being censured by Stanford University. Harvard came after Kulldorff really hard, and Sunetra, was brutally abused by academia in the UK. So all the dissidents faced terrible attacks just merely for stating very obvious things that I think most people today would agree with. The people who don't agree with it still, mainstream media, legacy scientific establishment that was thoroughly corrupted long before COVID exposed it all. Mm-hmm. And now we're kind of in this weird limbo. So anyway, RFK...
Let's quickly play the old ACIP function. We have just a 20-second video of how they did their business in the previous incarnation of the group there. It's really interesting, if not laughable.
At the same time with other adjuvanted vaccines?
We have no data to make a recommendation one way or the other.
Just to sort of put this in context of other vaccines, whilst preclinical studies were not done using these vaccines simultaneously, our general approach to immunizations is that they can be given at the same time in different limbs.
Dr. Hunter?
Are multiple adjuvanted vaccines used in Europe or other markets?
Dr. Ward, do you want to comment?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay.
Yeah. What? How could that be? How could that be? Europe doesn't do it? I wonder why. And we have no data to support that it's safety. This is the insanity. Remind ourselves that the two FDA reviewers that were the most storied professionals in vaccine safety had to quit because they had concerns about the rushing out of the RNA platform? I forget their names. I wrote them down.
Yeah, it was because of the booster. The booster was grandfathered in with the trials that were already pretty darn sketchy, and then they ran the booster tests on like 6 mice looking for antibodies, and they said, "Oh yeah, that's a great shot. Let's give that to everybody." At that point, our two friends of the FDA just resigned, and I understand why. They were concerned that this booster would besmirch their reputations. They just didn't want any part of it.
And it would be mandated. That's the other thing, the mandating of these things. It just did not have the Gruber and the other one's name, Krauss. Gruber and Krauss were the two. And they were highly respected.
And highly respected. And also you notice that they did not go to work for any pharmaceutical companies afterwards. They immediately went to a quiet retirement. Not everybody at the FDA could do that. There were many people.
Can we get them? Can we find them? Can we get them to write an article for Brownstone? Might that be an interesting idea?
Oh yeah. No, I know them well. Yeah, they're good guys. But
get an article.
Yeah, but they're also just, both of them are disgusted and demoralized and unhappy.
Good.
But there were many.
Yeah. Just my kind of person. That's my kind of people right now. That's who we got to get in this battle.
Yeah, I agree with that. And there are many people at the FDA that stuck around because they weren't in a position to just resign in protest, and they decided to stay and fight. And even to this day, they themselves report that they're not entirely sure who or what was in charge. They don't feel as if it was certainly wasn't science. It wasn't even necessarily the FDA. There were spooky, strange things happening at that time. That's part of what we're still trying to piece together.
Get Sasha Latapova in on that. She has a whole, is it DARPA? She has a whole, a story that she tells where these things went off the rail. And it fit, all the pieces fit together. Lastly, how's Brett Weinstein being? I haven't heard from him lately. Is he still active in the fight?
Oh yeah, no, he's fantastic. He's just a genius. He's coming to Brownstone Supper Club next month. Well, and I think on the other matter we talked about that we don't want to talk about publicly, I think you're going to see him again soon, actually, if all things work out. He's a great guy and a man of real integrity. I think a little bit like you, it took him a while to kind of fully come to terms with the absurdities of all that were happening in the COVID period. But once it became obvious, he became this ferocious fighter. And we're still, here's the other thing, Dr. Drew. I was talking about that this morning with some friends at a conservative think tank here in Connecticut. I think the corruption far predates COVID. And it's really deeply embedded in the scientific establishment, in the media, in our corporations, and it's pervasive. It affects our food. It affects the medical journals. Our medical system, our delivery systems for medical services are profound. It's all woven into that too. So, it's not just about this one pandemic. It's about what the response says about the systems that we lived under before and we live under still. And there's some nice changes. I mean, RFK is making some really good efforts. They banned gain-of-function research. We pulled the COVID shot from the routine childhood schedule. They're very important that we've got new standards for testing. We're looking back at some of the previously approved vaccines to check them for their safety and efficacy because of the absence of the proper sort of placebo-controlled trials. All these things are happening, and it's very good. I also want to mention that the so-called Big New Beautiful Bill that is apparently going to pass at some point has quite a lot in there that takes small but seemingly be probably important steps towards reforming the medical system by expanding HSAs and empowering direct primary care, and for HSAs and DPCs to work together for the first time. That's a really important, I think it may be the most important change that could affect our lives, really, to gradually emancipate us from the insurance beast and the employer mandates. And there's some provisions in there that give employers and employees some outs and some options to the currently mandated system. So there's some good changes in there. There are about 18 of them, and I went through them in detail for an article for Epoch Times, I guess, yesterday, and I like them very much. It's not enough, but I'm just glad for some. Yeah, it's a start, and we're starting to see some real efforts. But look at the reaction of the press. Just look at them. The way they're responding like it's the end of the world, now that we're seeing some elements of rationality and science and concerns over patient choice and that sort of thing coming back. We've got the mass media just screaming, every single day about it. So, pray for our friends in government. Jay and Macquarie and RFK and Dr. Oz and these people are doing their best to transition us from whatever that system was that gave us that COVID response, and whatever it is that's making us wildly unhealthy and making our people not trust their doctors and not get the drugs they need, or, but when they need them, whatever that was, we're making progress towards fixing it. But I tell you, it's against all odds, all odds. So they're great.
It feels like it. It feels like it. I get that. The Life After Lockdown. Life After Lockdown is the book. Please get it. Please read it. Two last comments from me. One is, the DOJ gets around some of that entrenched bureaucracy you were talking about. But if they can't get the bureaucracy to move, they just hire parallel staff. They just hire people to work alongside of it that will do their work. So we can't do that in the HHS because, as you said, of all the protocols and the research and the different organizations and the CDC and the FDA, all these different, it's just impossible to do it that way there. The other thing, Brett Weinstein came up to me after that lecture I gave at the Brownstone gathering in Pittsburgh. And he said, oh my God, you're on to something here, which is I've been saying, is that we don't teach the scientific method, and that the scientific method is a delicate instrument that is almost never applied. And when it is applied, it isn't applied properly. So at its core, we aren't even doing science properly. That's the incredible insight that when he ran over to me and said that, I thought, oh my God, he's seeing it too. Now I see it everywhere. Certainly in the publications, it's just everywhere.
Did you see what Justice Thomas said in his concurring opinion for the Tennessee case yesterday? He wrote this for the Supreme Court. He said, you know what? We are done with your scientific experts. We're finished with that stuff. That is not going to have any relevance for the application of the law in the future. Of no relevance, he said, because the dissenting opinion was citing the AMA and the this and the that and the other things on this gender transition issue. And Justice Thomas said, I think we've been there and done that, and we're finished with it. You can take your scientific expertise and shove it.
The law should literally be above that. The scientific, the scientific opinions could be in the application of the law, not in the design of the law or I don't know. In any event, all areas I have little expertise, but I do appreciate everything you do. I appreciate you joining us. Life After Lockdown and the great work that the Brownstone Institute does. I'm blanking on the name of the physician who wrote that book that I like so much, where he chronicled his evolution during COVID that you guys published. Oh, we just had him on a couple weeks ago. You can help me with that, Doctor.
No, I don't know. We published 20 books. Clayton Baker.
Clayton Baker's book. Yeah, that book was great.
Great. Yeah, you loved that book, didn't you?
I did love that book.
Yeah, I was so grateful that you liked that book. Yeah, that's an important work. He's a very interesting guy. Another one of these Ivy grads who just finally just got fed up. His book is called The Medical Masquerade. Yeah.
Well, I have found there's a common, that's right, medical masquerade. It's the common thread that I have found that unifies most people that have had enough and sort of find each other is a training in the pursuit of an approximation of the truth. That's what we trained in. That's what we valued. That's how we did our science. That's how we did our clinical training. It's how we practice medicine. And we've noticed collectively that has been trashed. And that's what we're trying to defend.
Yeah.
So thank you, sir, for being here. And we will talk again soon. Jeffrey A. Tucker on X. And go ahead and get Life After Lockdown.
Thank you, Dr. Drew.
You bet. We're going to take a little break, and coming up, Vibeke Manniche. She is a physician, a researcher in Denmark, and she has some research. She published the data on the particular lots of COVID vaccine and the relative risk of serious side effect being higher in certain lots than others. She now has data from Czech Republic on women and fertility, and it's pretty astonishing. Back with it after this. What's so special about Paleo Valley's grass-fed and finished bone broth and superfood bars? Well, everything. All are delicious, high in nutrients, low in calories, and contain nothing artificial. Co-founder Autumn Smith on what goes into every superfood bar.
So we have bone broth protein powder, and then we've added other superfoods, cashew butter, we have spirulina in there, acerola, broccoli powder, kale, blueberries. And so it really is kind of just an infusion of superfoods with every bite.
And then there's the extraordinary bone broth protein made with an ancestral approach that boosts our collagen intake.
Collagen is something that's gone by the wayside in our modern diet because we don't eat nose to tail anymore, but it was something we ate a lot of, and it has so many benefits. So if you have sagging skin, joint pain, gut issues, your decreased bone mineral density, slow to heal your wounds, slow recovery, these are all things that collagen can dramatically improve. If we're not giving our body the building blocks to produce it, we just age more rapidly. It also improves sleep, improves blood sugar control. So it's essentially like the Swiss Army knife of healthy aging.
Like I said, Paleo Valley's bone broth is something special. Make Paleo Valley part of your longevity regimen. Go to drdrew.com/Paleo Valley for 20% off when you subscribe and 15% off your first order. That is drdrew.com/Paleo Valley. The Wellness Company knows that taking charge of your family's healthcare is a top priority, and that's why they're constantly innovating to deliver the products and services to help you be rationally ready. Be sure to have the medical kit for kids on hand, whether you're a parent or grandparent. It treats 20 childhood conditions, including nausea and vomiting, allergies, asthma, inflammatory illnesses, even bioterror, God forbid. Listen, croup, ear infections, lice, it's all available in the pediatric emergency kit. You can also order the kids kit with an EpiPen should your child be at risk of anaphylaxis. And those EpiPens are carefully sourced and well priced relative to other EpiPens in the market. All 7 kits, each customized for a different purpose, come with a telemedicine consultation and a guidebook. Skip the scramble to an urgent care waiting room full of sick people and expense, or a pharmacy where there's no guarantee they'll have what you need. Go to drdrew.com/TWC for 10% off any medical emergency kit, or the supplements for that matter. That again is drdrew.com/TWC.
So I've traveled with my hyaluronic acid serum for my face, which I use every day. And we also brought along the active skin repair. Thank goodness, because I wounded myself. I'll show you the wound as we go. I don't want to pull the dressing up just yet. But the hypochlorous acid in this was used. I used it as an antibacterial. It's been proven as an antimicrobial. And the thing is healing beautifully, like better than ever. Like, feels great. Here's a picture of what it looked like before I put the dressing on. I was delighted by the effects of the active skin repair. Hypochlorous acid is antimicrobial. It's been clinically proven, and this thing is healing well without difficulty. If you'd like some, go to drdrew.com/skin repair. I'm now free to enjoy my trip, not worry about infection, not worry about bleeding all over the place. This has been working beautifully, and I can get on and keep traveling.
And that suggests trouble in a relationship.
Sean, who are you? Like Dr. Drew all of a sudden?
So here in New York, I always get dry skin. And speaking of active skin repair, here comes my dermatologist putting on the hyaluronic acid, which really is literally the only moisturizer I can use. Okay, let's make it snappy here. It's not a full.
He doesn't like it.
Yeah. All right, there we go. Thank you very much.
Better.
All right, appreciate it. All righty. That's the moisturizer. I can't take any other moisturizers except that one. It's extraordinary. All right, Dr. Vibeke Manniche. She can be followed on X on Manniche Vibeke, Vibeke. Last name is Minniche. Vibeke Manniche on Instagram and Vibeke.dk. Vibeke Manniche. Thank you so much. I'm going to get your name right one of these days. I'm getting closer. But thank you for being here again.
And thank you for having me. I'm very grateful to be back. Thank you.
So for people who perhaps didn't see your first appearance with us, frame just briefly, if you don't mind, your frustrations with getting the first paper published and how the echoes of that experience were had once again here with this new study.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we did have our batch dependency study out. Was it March 23? I mean, times are running. And before that, we tried to have it published in several journals, like, of course, the big ones, the big fives, New England Journal of Medicine, the Lancet, BMJ, and all those. JAMA. We tried to have it. And they literally just said, like, New England Journal of Medicine, literally, it took the chief editor 2 hours, literally 2 hours to say, thank you, but no thanks. And then, eventually we had it for peer review and we succeeded. And it's been quite a study which has been very popular, all over the world. And it should be because it's very varying, the batch dependency in the side effects. And in this case, it was the Pfizer vaccine against COVID-19. But then we're looking into several data, and we do have a lot of data. And this study is based on data from the Czech Republic. And in this case, I'll get back to what it shows. But in this case, we also tried, I think this is our number 7 journal. And it was exactly the same story all over again. We thought, oh, well, maybe something has happened. Maybe, in the light of the Trump administration, the Kennedy, of course, what they have said about the censorship in the medical journals, maybe, cross fingers, there was a chance that they would be more, open-minded and kind of looking into the varying data. But they didn't. But eventually we have succeeded. And the study is actually now out after peer review. This is, we have from the preprint, and this is the actual article in the journal, and we're very grateful for that. It's been a proper peer review, and that's nice. So eventually we succeeded, and I think what worries me and what also worried us was the whole team is that the data are a very big concern because what it shows is that literally women who had the vaccination against COVID-19 before the conception, before they get pregnant, actually do give birth to less amount of children. They have almost 30% less children born. And that's very concerning. This is actually a very good graph you're showing there, because this is actually also showing that we had a decline of all, we had in Denmark and several other European countries, we had literally on a date, a decline of the birth rate. And you can see that it started in the start of 22. And it literally on you could put your clock on it and it started. And you can see there in the end where you can see that there's a rapid decline. Suddenly, it's almost on the same date. And that makes sense because when we look into our data, which is from the period of January 21 till December 23, we can see that 70% of all women had at least one shot against COVID-19. And this is just shots against COVID-19. So they had one shot at least. And then we tried to look into how many women in that period of time would give birth and how many of those women were either unvaccinated or vaccinated before conception. And what it shows was, as I said before, that there was a difference that the women giving birth who had been vaccinated before conception gave birth to around 30% less. And that could literally explain the decline, the rapid decline on birth rates, because it also showed our data that the women who was unvaccinated actually had the same birth rate as earlier on. So what it shows is that there seems to be some kind of connection to the vaccination and, in this case, infertility, or at least infertility for a certain period of time, because we don't know yet whether this is reversible, whether, it would come back to normal, or if it's a change for good. And of course, we worried that it will be a change for good, that there has been a damage of some sort to the fertility of some of the vaccinated women. And what is also interesting is that I think that there's one of the explanations is for sure that a lot of women in the childbearing age had bleeding disturbances, as a side effect to the vaccination. And we know that we have many studies showing that. So that's definitely one of the explanations, that the bleeding disturbances, of course, gave the women less fertility, less fertile. And in the end, they didn't give birth to that many children. And actually, there should be another graph. If you have that, this is the graph showing.
Before you go there, I have some questions about this one. So, yeah. and these are unfair questions because I know that you didn't specifically study these things, but I'm wondering if these things kind of fell out of the study in any way. So, did you try to is it 70% had decreased live birth? Is that right, or 30%? 70%?
30% less live birth. Yes.
Was there any pattern about that 30%? Had they also had COVID? Had they not had COVID? Had they had more than one vaccine? Could you see anything about, okay. And did you do nuclear capsid antibodies on anybody to try to parse out COVID versus not COVID? Okay. And
no,
then,
this is only immunology, yeah.
It's a preliminary. I get it. Yeah. And then it's clean. That's what I like about it. It's just a clean study. That's how you do things. I see that in your studies. The bleeding, you referred to bleeding. So are you talking about placental failure? Is that what you think is happening?
No, I don't. I don't really know. I know that many women had bleeding disturbances, and if you have a bleeding disturbance, your fertility will be worse. It's not a bleeding disturbance in the pregnancy; it's before the pregnancy. So it seems like maybe they didn't even get pregnant because of bleeding disturbances, menstrual disturbances, period disturbances.
I see.
So we don't know, and there may be many explanations whether this is the result. And that is what big data can do. This is like 1.3 million women. And that's why we are so eager to get hold of US data, if we could get hold of those. But we love big amount of data, because in big amount of data, you can look into even small differences, because you need a certain amount of data to see differences. And for sure, this is a very varying difference. And it also kind of go together with what we know of the disturbances with the period, the bleeding disturbances, and also that we can see the rapid decline, literally on the same date in several European countries. So it's like that there must be a connection of some sort, which is, I think, very worrying. But then again, we need more studies, we need more data, we need many more countries to replicate. This is only the Czech Republic. We need to have data from, as I said, US, from all over the world, to try and replicate, because there has been replication of our batch dependency studies. It has been replicated. We replicated it ourselves in Sweden. It has been replicated in the US, in the Czech Republic. But I think this is like, the batch dependency study was very important. But this is like, I think, devastating. If this is, not going back to normal, irreversible, then it's tragic. Then it's like, you need, of course, a certain amount of birth to keep a country going, to keep the population going, and even more if you have more death, which we have had for a while in Denmark, than you have, baby born, then it's very worrying for, in the end, the population as such and how it's going to go. And therefore, I think for some women, this could be, even for the population, for the nations, for the world, it's a tragedy. But also for many women and couples, this could be a huge tragedy, and especially if it doesn't go back to normal.
Now, when they've done questionnaire studies, I believe it was in this country, asking why, young people are not having kids, the most common thread that falls out is money. It's too expensive to have kids.
Yeah.
Does that in any way impact this or explain this? I mean, after all, we just had COVID was a massive hit to the economy. Everyone felt very insecure afterwards. I would imagine my assessment would be you'd expect to see it go down and kind of come back up if that was the case.
Yeah. I think we just saw, the thing is we don't really have good numbers on that, and especially not from the Czech Republic. We just saw some data from Austria where they asked couples whether they want to have one or more children. And in 2016, 40% said they want to have a child. And in the end of 2024, it was the same amount. But, we don't really know. And I think when you talk about infertility, of course, this is not the only explanation for sure. But I think the rapid decline we saw, I think that seems to be very obvious that that's a very close connection to the vaccination and the rollout of that. But what is the explanation? I think there could be many explanations. I also think that the lockdowns did interfere with relationships with couples mating out or whatever it's called, but to meeting each other to keep a relationship going and so on. So I think also lockdowns could have a bad impact on relationships and in the end, parenthood. But I think this is such a strong signal. And that's what epidemiology, really can. It's showing signals. And I'm personally not, I'm quite certain that there is a connection. And what also worries me is that, which we have talked about earlier on, the lack of transparency. I think that, and that's why we put this out as a preprint in the end, because it was so difficult to have it just going through peer review, because they didn't send it for peer review to the journals. And that's why we decided to put it out as a preprint, because we said this is so important for the whole world to know, not only the women or the couples involved, but for the whole world, this is, a tragedy. So, and therefore, I think what everyone should think is, how is it, let's say in the US, how is it, and give us access to all these data to maintain or not maintain, give us back transparency. Because the truth is that many countries has been sitting on these data, try and hide them away and not giving us access to the data. And we would love, of course, to have access to many more data, because I think every country should go and try and replicate and see whether they will find the same connection, or if this is just a lonely bird, so to say.
Lonely bird. My other question and the issue of concern as it pertains to pregnancy is women who received the vaccine during pregnancy, which was still being pushed actively, very hard on women. And you didn't see any pattern that way in terms of the boostering being given and that having more of an adverse effect.
No, we have trying, and we're still looking into a lot of data. We have tried, and we have tried look into stillborns. We have tried look into congenital malformations. I mean, I'm still like, Pfizer themselves put one of those post-marketing reports out, was it half a year ago, September or something, in 24, well, that's more than half a year. And in that very small case, they had very few cases in that report. But there was actually a higher number of congenital malformations in the women, in the very few women who had the corona vaccination, and that was the Pfizer. But the numbers were so small, so you couldn't do any statistics on it and that. But I'm for sure we're looking into if there's a higher degree of stillborn. We're looking into malformations, but then again, that's why I'm saying we need a huge amount of data to see if there has been a difference. And as some of those could be early miscarriages, which we won't be able to get access to those data. So what we can look into is, how many did give birth and how many of those were actually vaccinated or non-vaccinated. But on a case-to-case study, I think, we could make a difference, or the people at the hospitals should try and look into if a woman has a miscarriage, which batch did she have? We think there's a batch dependency also. Which batch did she have? So I think, we can't do the studies ourselves all the time. We need some other scientists to go into here? This very important field.
You see this? You were going to go over this other graph before I drove you in the other direction.
That's right.
This is that graph, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just to show that the light blue graph is the non-vaccinated women, and the dark blue is the vaccinated women, and the line in between is all. And there you can see that the dark blue, which is in the bottom, keep having quite a wide, quite a long way from the light blue, which are the non-vaccinated. So that's actually the difference of the birth rate between the two groups. And therefore you can see that it starts in around, and that's where we put the lines, but it starts, the big difference starts around 22, and then you can see it just continues. Even though that there's a decline, a small decline also among the unvaccinated, it continues. And that's why this ends in December 23. And we need to look into the data from 24, 25, and move on and see how the data will, because that's what I'm worried about, or we are worried about, is whether, as I said before, it will get back to normal or not. And then in the end, I think also it's very important to find out what is the explanation. Is there something we can do?
Mechanism.
Yeah, the mechanism, is there something we can do to repair not disease, but, if something we can do to repair the damage, an antidote or whatever. So I think it's very important to look more into the field and even have more scientists to look into it, so we kind of make the patchwork or the puzzle together.
So I think I asked you this last time you were on the show, and more time has gone by and more evidence has come out about the excesses of the COVID era. And I'm going to ask this question again. I ask it often of people. What happened? This didn't just happen in this country. This happened in the whole world. What happened to our profession, or what was going on in our profession that we were prone to this? It's astonishing to me. If I were reading a novel about this, a fictional novel, I'd say, way too far. No way. Never happened.
You would say, oh, no, they're crazy. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. No, I wish I could give you a proper answer. I keep discussing this with my good friends in the field also, like Peter McCulloch. I met him recently in Texas. It's like, what happened? How come, brilliant colleagues just, kind of didn't listen, didn't look, didn't think themselves. For me, I think everyone can be brainwashed, even doctors. And that is the short answer, that I think a lot of doctors were brainwashed and stopped thinking themselves. And we're humans like anyone else. And they but I think it's very, sad, and it's more than sad because it does have, someone paid a high price. We're now looking into all-cause mortality, and we can see that there's a bad dependency also. People died, and people will be dying because of our colleagues being brainwashed. And there's not an excuse really, because I think that you should always try and look into data, to facts, try and understand these, and try to keep at least this common sense also.
Yeah, right, exactly.
So
I'm going to bring up a name that I brought up with Jeffrey also, which is Sasha Latapova, who has a lot of thoughts about manufacturing shortcomings. Have you talked to her at all?
I met her. Yeah, I met her on Iceland. I think she's very great, and she certainly has an insight which I don't have in the same kind of way. And she may be right, but I don't have an insight into the whole pharmaceutical industry, which she has. And I'm good at epidemiology. I'm good at reading the numbers, so to speak, and kind of see what's the trend, what's the signal. And I think for sure a lot of money is on stake. That's for sure. And now look into the whole thing about Kennedy with the children vaccination program, and you see pediatricians in the U.S. having letters in New England Journal of Medicine and all that. And my husband and I just discussed that before being on your great show, and it's like, why do you do that? I mean, what are your intentions? Is that because some doctors has a too close a connection to the industry? Is that because kind of they think that they should be part of, political correctness? What is the explanation? Because I would always say, okay, give me the proof, give me the documentation, give me the data, and let's look into those together. And that's what we have been asking for all the time, is to have the discussion also among scientists to discuss, let's see on this project, this study, well, what is the explanation? And that discussion has just been censored, literally been censored. And instead there has been attacks and trying and have articles retracted, which didn't succeed, but still some others did have their articles retracted. And I think that's so sad also for our community as doctors, because we shouldn't behave like that. We should keep thinking and keep having the discussions. And therefore also I'm so grateful with Kennedy on the post now. I'm so grateful for Jay on NIH and Macquarie on FDA and Vinay also. I'm so grateful because these are for me people who in all this, fuss has been focusing on, proper medical science and autonomy first of all, do no harm.
Autonomy. Yeah. Yes. You said it a lot in that sentence. For do no harm. That's number one. And they've lost track of the risk-benefit analysis in every choice we make. Two, centralized, this sort of totalitarian impulse of centralized authority in medicine is anathema to medicine. It's the opposite of medicine. And be thoughtful, be careful. Like Vinay Prasad, a great example of somebody who was thinking all the way through the pandemic and trying to figure things out, and spoke up with dispassionately and carefully. But I have to wrap this up. I always appreciate you being here, Dr. Manniche, and keep up the great work. And we're happy to sort of present it here whenever you need it put out to the public. We're happy to be a part of that process of raising awareness.
Thank you very much, and thank you for having me. It's great to be on your show, and it's a good job you're doing. So thank you very much for that also. You
got it. Appreciate it. Thank you. And you can follow Dr. Manniche at Manniche Vibeke on X, and Vibeke Manniche on Instagram, and VibekeManniche.dk is the website. Again, Jeffrey Tucker is Jeffrey A. Tucker on X, and JeffreyTucker.me is the website. Brownstone Institute. Coming up guests, I know we've had some people added. Dr. Dr. Manniche mentioned Peter McCullough. I know he has joined the schedule. Jenny McCarthy's back on the schedule. Dr. Vacton, I'm very interested to talk to him. Joe Allen, Amanda Head, all people, all great guests. Do not miss any of these shows. We appreciate you being here. And be sure to support the people that support us. I did not mention my V-Shred MD products today, but they go with the Fatty 15, both the NR Boost, the nicotinamide riboside PQQ, and the Cinosync, which is Fisetin and resveratrol. These are really important ingredients, particularly the post-COVID era, I think, and for longevity, that's just undebatable. It's just we can finally do something to increase our lifespan and our wellness span. So V-Shred MD is where you get those two products. I take them every day, make Susan take them every day with the Fatty, and that is our protocol now. So we will see you, I always have to check. It's Tuesday at 3 o'clock, Caleb, 2 o'clock rather. Next week, is that correct?
Yes, I was trying. I have the chart hasn't updated yet, but we do have Dr. Peter McCullough coming up. I forget which day, but he's next week
on the 25th. That's Wednesday. That's
yes,
Wednesday,
with Joe Allen, which is going to be very. And Joe Allen's always interesting.
And Dr. Vacton is in Europe also, and so he's going to be at 10 in the morning Pacific time. We're doing that special to sort of accommodate his time zones. But I really do want to talk to him. You'll enjoy that. So, Gutfeld tonight. I will see you there. And until Tuesday, 2 o'clock Pacific time. See you then. Ask Dr. Drew is produced by Caleb Nation and Susan Pinsky. As a reminder, the discussions here are not a substitute for medical care, diagnosis, or treatment. This show is intended for educational and informational purposes only. I am a licensed physician, but I am not a replacement for your personal doctor, and I am not practicing medicine here. Always remember that our understanding of medicine and science is constantly evolving. Though my opinion is based on the information that is available to me today, some of the contents of this show could be outdated in the future. Be sure to check with trusted resources in case any of the information has been updated since this was published. If you or someone you know is in immediate danger, don't call me, call 911. If you're feeling hopeless or suicidal, call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 800-273-8255. You can find more of my recommended organizations and helpful resources at drdrew.com/help.